Sahil, welcome. I'm going to start with you. What is your definition of agentic AI? That's a term that's familiar to people, but maybe not coin of the realm like something like the other types of AI.
That's a great question, and one we get quite frequently. I think most people are familiar, at least the ones that we're speaking with, our clients, about traditional machine learning techniques. A lot of them have started to move beyond that towards generative AI capabilities and how to apply those. I think what's different is when you think about generative AI, it's typically deployed today using chat-based interfaces where you're asking questions or prompting a large language model for a specific type of response. And then the human has to interpret that and then decide what to do. Agentic AI builds on that, but pushes it one step further. So what's distinct is the ability to think about complex reasoning, task identification, having enough data and context, and tool access to actually implement the recommendations directly and achieve complex automations. Now, one thing that's interesting is this conversation that we encounter where people say, haven't you been talking about automation for the last decade? So what's really different? Like, what are we talking about here that's different from historical automation? And I would say there are two things. One, the complexity of the task and the ability for your system to be agile enough to respond to a new situation. Traditional automation says, if A happens, do B. If C happens, do C. But traditional systems don't know what to do when X happens, right? And agentic AI capabilities allow you to account for new conditions and still complete tasks. I think the second is a degree of what we call decoupling in the technical architecture. So today, almost all interactions between systems are pretty bespoke. They require API integrations to happen. I think in the far future, you'll see a portfolio of agents that can real-time negotiate how to work with each other and actually execute functionality. They may not even be written today or doesn't even exist in the system.
That term AI agents, Shane, is a term that you tipped me to, and it kind of fits with a conversation I had recently with an AI expert inside the federal government. This person was talking about the personification of AI, at least the way that we think about and talk about artificial intelligence tools. Define that term AI agent and what your vision is for what that AI agent does in colleague and in working with a human.
Absolutely. And as we think about agentic AI, one of the key steps that Sahil kind of pointed towards is going past this chatbot interface where you really have this one-shot approach, okay, to now where we have digital agents that almost act like digital assistants, okay, or digital employees, okay, that are basically supporting the human workers, okay, and augmenting the capabilities. So basically helping them to turn around and be more productive, okay, learning their tasks, having access to tools, and then being able to turn around and accelerate the ability for whether it's service delivery, okay, whether it's, making decisions. So, but basically combining information, okay, and typing and queuing, but doing these tasks where it no longer requires step-by-step orchestration by a human, similar to what a chatbot would typically do, but now being able to have the agent to be able to turn around and work independently and to be able to automate, okay, breaking large problems down into smaller tasks, possibly even working with multiple different agents to be able to solve these complex problems, and then to be able to turn around and drastically increase the value, okay, to the human workers. And, we look at, both generative AI, okay, as well as agentic AI. The real power of this is it's empowering the federal workforce. It's helping them do their jobs better. And we also look at this as a way for them to basically save time, save money, and ultimately save lives.
Yeah, that descriptor that you used of the agents working with other agents, apart from some human having to supervise, sounds like really an exponential growth in productivity, not linear.
Oh, it's completely exponential. And as you start thinking about the connections between the models, and as I highlighted the tools, we just saw the model context protocol come out from Anthropic, and OpenAI and the rest of the ecosystem has started to turn around and embrace that as kind of this universal interface to be able to turn and connect models with other enterprise resources and tools, but then also to turn around and be able to turn around and connect it model to model. to really start being able to take advantage of this. And the power of that is, as I start developing, okay, these generative AI models that are fine-tuned for very specific domain applications, now I can be introducing these models on the fly, both because of this accelerating pace of innovation that we see, as well as the continuing deluge of data that the federal agencies have to turn around and deal with.
What's the groundwork, Sahil, that agencies should be laying to realize the vision that you've both talked about here for agentic AI?
Yeah, I think we touched on this on the previous panel, but access to data and access in a way that's secure, that's tied to identity of these agents is paramount. I think if we're not able to access the data, the agents don't have essentially the context necessary to execute the work that they need to. And so I think thinking about the data layer and specifically the semantic layer becomes critical. We encounter a number of problems that we're trying to solve, and one of them is isolation of data in separate systems that we cannot get access to, and that becomes really hard. The other thing that I would think about is that agencies need to sort of complement short-term thinking with mid-term thinking. I think with any new emerging technology, the first thing you must do is it proves value. It has to prove value to the mission that you're trying to deliver, and that value can be measured based on speed of execution, cost efficiencies, or degree of agility in that like your mission can respond to new things. But that has to be complemented with what I call midterm thinking, which is being able to go beyond a prototype or a pilot and be able to have a reliable, secure, and scalable multi-agent system with the right guardrails that you can actually be agile enough to execute when new situations you encounter, but also situations where like the agents aren't like hallucinating to the point where the workflow hasn't actually been executed. So the short-term, mid-term thinking is critical. And I would be remiss to like not say there needs to be a long-term sort of viewpoint too about like how you think about envisioning the mission in the future. Because how you deliver the mission today is going to be very different from how you likely will envision and deliver the mission in the future.
Shane, to Sahil's point about mission delivery, what strikes me is that's completely different about artificial intelligence deployment in government versus other technologies in the past is agencies are really fixated on use cases and doing exactly what he suggested. What's the value that you see agencies deriving long-term by focusing in that way instead of going, oh, AI is cool, we should get some of that and see what we can do with it?
Yeah, without a doubt, part of the biggest shift that we've seen is the focus on use case and mission impact. Okay, how do we turn around and leverage AI? And first and foremost, we should always develop AI to solve a problem. We shouldn't develop AI for technology's sake. Okay, so but as we look at developing AI for specific use cases, now the impact for the organization is how I can turn around and basically leverage, okay, that accelerating pace of innovation to continuously apply, okay, and embrace and thinking about this of how do I enable that, having that AI enabling infrastructure, that AI factory that helps the organizations turn and take advantage of the entire stack as part of that accelerating pace of innovation. And as a result, what they're able to do is continually increase the productivity and the efficiency, okay, of their workforce, okay, to be able to have, new employees that rather than it taking 5 to 10 years to gain a level of knowledge, to be able to leverage AI agents, to be able to help them be productive and impactful in literally a matter of months. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really the biggest impact that we're going to see is the ability to augment humans to drastically enhance their performance in the roles that they're playing, and also to enhance the service delivery across the government agencies.
We just have a couple of minutes left, and I want to ask you both the same question, and I'll start with you, Sahil. Are there questions when you go and talk to folks inside agencies that they ask you that make you think these folks are really on it, they know what they're doing, and are there questions that when they ask you, you go, oh, these poor guys really have a long road ahead?
Not necessarily specific questions. I think the common question that we get, and when I hear it, I realize these people are tracking this pretty closely, is how do you keep up with the pace of change and how rapidly this technology is evolving? We're talking about sort of generative AI capabilities and agencies still prototyping and piloting them. And at the same time, we're talking about actually doing prototypes where we're talking about multi-agent solutions. And so Shane talked about the Model Context Protocol. Google launched A2A. There's new protocols and standards coming online every single day. There's new companies that are working at what we call the agentic horizontal layer, which is more about agent orchestration. And then there's companies that are working on vertical solutions, solving one specific area within sort of multi-agent solutions, whether it's software engineering or like IT operations. And so when I talk to an individual and they have that degree of sophistication around understanding that it's kind of impossible to keep up with this, that's when I know, oh, we're like in the same boat together. Yeah. We're both trying to solve the same problem. So
Shane, final thought about that?
Yeah, and I think for customers that come forward and say, this is the problem I'm trying to solve. This is how I need AI to help me. Okay. And they have a very clearly defined problem that also links to a criteria of success. And I think that really helps differentiate them from customers that will come forward and basically say, I need AI, not just any AI, I need great AI. Okay, being able to have the specificity of what problem am I trying to solve and how do I leverage, to Sahil's point, this accelerating pace of innovation to solve it. And then they start thinking about, okay, I'm not just looking at using retrieval augmented generation, but how do I start making use of multi-agent systems? How do I start making use of agentic orchestration? Those are the things for customers where they're starting to think, how do I empower my workforce and leverage AI to do that?
Shane, Sahil, it's great to have you here today. Thanks for joining me.